Welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and this is my review of Batman number 52 and 53. So I said I might not be abandoning this series, and true to my word, we're going to keep going with this thing. My reasoning for it is quite simple. It hasn't let up in sales whatsoever, and that might seem like a superficial reason to keep reviewing this thing, but it's really not. It's not like it's just not letting up in sales. It's still #1 every week it's published. Batman, the series, is generally like that in terms of sales numbers. It's just what is the most on people's pull list, as it were. But I think that speaks for itself. It means that enough people are willing to look past the issues of issue number 50 and enjoy the comic and the series for what it is. Personally, I have a lot of problems with it. Less so the story, although that very much is there. But if it was just a bad story, it'd be one thing. My real objection with it has to do with the nature of the advertising that surrounded Batman number 50 and the fundamental dishonesty behind it. As I said in my review of Batman number 51, I probably wouldn't still be reading this series were it not for this channel and our role as reviewers. But I don't harbor any bitterness over that. I don't mind continuing this thing because that kind of is making for an interesting dynamic. Because I keep going beyond what I would normally tolerate as a fan, and I feel like I've been rewarded for that. I really have enjoyed these 3 issues that have followed the wedding. I hated the wedding, don't get me wrong. I still am very frustrated about that because the comic itself, Batman number 50, is great. It would have been the perfect wedding between Selina and Batman, but the last minute fake out and the way that this story was marketed left a bitter taste in my mouth. And the whole idea of Bane being this sneaky little manipulator of all these events is so lame. And issues number 52 and 53 don't change my opinions on any of that. There's actually some interesting aspects we learn in these last 2 issues. Basically, the idea behind this story is that Mr. Freeze is on trial after Batman went after him, beat the bloody crap out of him, and had the GCPD arrest the man for murder. Now, Victor claims that he only confessed out of duress after being violently attacked by Batman, who's all upset after the wedding didn't go that well. And regretting his actions, Bruce Wayne joins the jury of this trial in an attempt to assuade the other jury members that he was wrong as Batman, and that Victor Freeze was innocent of these particular crimes. If this were done under better circumstances, I would love the crap out of this story, because it's so interesting for a superhero to have arrested a villain only to realize that he was wrong, use his civilian identity to get himself on the jury, and convince that jury that he was wrong and the villain is innocent. It's so good, and if you left this series after issue number 50, I kind of recommend you check this one out because it digs into Batman's character, into why the jury should rule in favor of him being innocent, and what actually happened that propelled Batman into pursuing this and wrongfully accusing Victor of these crimes. It turns out that it basically has to do with Bane's little cabal and plans against Batman. Someone in his little motley crew of random villains and characters, of which their reasoning and presence on there I still haven't really delved into because I just simply don't care. Someone planted the evidence to make it look like Victor did it, kind of warned Victor about it beforehand so he'd arm himself in preparation for all of this, and then basically led Batman into doing this terrible thing that would eat away at him. And that clearly sets the tone for what we're going to be getting over these next few story arcs. These villains are going to be messing around with Batman and trying to toy with his emotional vulnerability, and it's not what I really like about this story arc. What's cool about this story arc is how it digs into the characters, how Batman confronts the jury members, not in an aggressive way, but in their assumptions and questioning these assumptions. And ultimately, it pays off magnificently. I haven't read a series of Batman stories this good in some time, including out of Tom King's run. This was really interesting. Batman talks about his faith to convince one woman who's Christian, and he basically acknowledges that he's an atheist, which has been pretty, we'll say, obvious from the comics for some time now. But as an atheist, I really like how Batman's able to talk to a Christian woman about this stuff in a very respectful manner, and talk about her faith and how he admires it and how he respects the crap out of it. Like, it's a really interesting discussion, and if you're open and honest about this sort of talk, then you'll really enjoy it. I certainly did, and it digs into the origin of Batman and the fact that he used to be a Christian, but can't believe in that anymore. And then it gets into what he does believe, and that is Batman, which kind of brings this whole issue full circle, and why Batman basically has to acknowledge that he isn't a god. He can make mistakes, and that's kind of what ultimately convinces the jury. But I don't know if that's going to make the rest of the stuff going forward good. You know, it's been a point of skepticism with me, but I have to tell you, having read these issues, I'm now more interested in seeing where things go from here, because Tom King is an interesting enough writer that, well, maybe he does have some good plans. I'm still bitter about all that wedding stuff. I'm not going to let that go just because this story is good. But this arc, in and of itself, is phenomenal, and I would kind of recommend it, especially if you were feeling wary about this series after issue 50. This arc was something else, and really impressed me on some fundamental level. Both issues 52 and 53 left me jazzed and just amazed at how great everything was. A big shout out, and a big part of that has to be Tim Weeks, whose artwork really sells a lot of this, especially in the facial expressions of Batman, the jury members, and the arguments he's trying to convey. They are a huge part in why this comic works. As is Elizabeth Breitweiser, who does the coloring work in these issues, and she does a phenomenal job as well. I like the coloring of Batman's suit. It reflects his identity as Bruce Wayne, while contrasting it with the more obvious tones of Batman, and just sort of nicely sets him apart from the other choices of the jury in terms of their coloring and how they're drawn. It makes him stand out, and that's important because he's the protagonist. And that might seem like a very little simple thing, but those are what really sell the comic in important ways. And that's about it. I would recommend you check this out, no matter how you feel about issue 50, because it has me reconsidering things, and it will probably have you think about things in a new way. Issues 51 to 53 are totally worth it, if you ask me. So let me know what you think in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.